We used to drive to school together every single day. 2 weeks after his 50th birthday surprise, he was gone. He filled out a government form saying he thought about suicide, and the counselor scheduled a sleep study and sent him home. What happened next is the kind of failure that haunts families forever. If you care about veterans, mental health, or stories of how systems fail the people who need them most, like and subscribe. This is a story about love, blame, and the question nobody wants to ask: could it have been prevented? We were kids who did everything together. Stephen and I, we were 18 months apart, and for most of our lives that 2-year gap barely meant anything. We shared a driveway, we shared a beat-up tent on camping trips, we shared a small, stubborn way of caring for the world that looked like picking up ants and taking them outside instead of squashing them. When he was little, Stephen would disappear from the campsite for hours. Once we found him in the woods with his palms cupped, sitting perfectly still while a handful of chipmunks crawled into his hands. He had a softness, careful, averse to hurting anything, that stuck with him even as he got older. So when he signed up to be a soldier, when war came and left its marks the way war always does, the Stephen we knew and loved didn't come back the same. The first time I saw that change, I didn't have the words for it. Later, I would learn about hypervigilance, sleepless nights, mental blanks between laughter, terms that put a label on what we were watching happen to him. But in the moment, it just felt like something had been taken from my brother. August 2016, New York City. By then, the family had settled into the rhythms of our lives, but Stephen was drifting. He'd been demoted at work. His marriage had ended. Small things stacked up into a mountain. He called Mom more in those last 2 weeks, and she told me he told her he forgave me for that fight we had at his 50th birthday. That fight, the stupid thing over his truck, is the last conversation we had. We had fought 2 weeks before he died. I wanted to borrow his truck to pick people up from the airport for the surprise party. He didn't want me to. He tried to stop me in the driveway. I took it anyway, because I'm the older sibling and because we're stubborn that way. He ignored me for the rest of the party. We never spoke again. When he died, the image of that fight lived inside me like a splinter. I listened to my mother ache through the phone, and she told me he had called her and forgiven me, but that didn't unpick the memory of the last thing we said to each other. My brain loops on it like a scratched record. The slammed door, his shoulder turned away, the way the headlights from cars cut the dark of the driveway while I walked inside. We filed a Freedom of Information Act request to get his evaluation. Because when someone dies like Stephen did, hanging himself with an electrical cord, you start asking the hard questions. You try to reconstruct the last weeks, and you look for any place where someone could have acted differently. The form should have been a lifeline. It's a standard psychological evaluation filled out when troops return from deployment, boxes about sleep, substance use, flashbacks, and the one that makes your stomach drop. Have you thought about suicide? Stephen checked that box. But the response was not what we expected, or rather what we prayed for. The counselor scheduled a sleep study and sent him home. The document we received, line after line, felt like a catalog of missed opportunities. The counselor read the form and treated it like paperwork to push along, like a bureaucratic checkbox instead of a crack in a dam. I don't have the training to pronounce a single cause for Stephen's death. There were demotion letters, a busted marriage, and a storm of things that could have tipped him. But I do know this. He told them how he felt. He said it out loud in a box. And a system that's supposed to catch people like him did not. It's clean to talk about PTSD like a clinical term. It's harder to look at the quiet, private ways it excavates someone. How joy erodes into sullen silence. How ordinary nights stretch with a weight that never lifts. Stephen used to bring ants outside. He would see a bug on the kitchen counter and rescue it. Yet the very system designed to protect him let him come home with that form in his pocket and nothing else. I blame them. Whether that's fair or whether grief is channeling its pain into someone to hang on to, I don't know. But when someone checks the box that says they're thinking about suicide, you listen. You don't hand them a pamphlet and a referral. You don't schedule a sleep study and send them into the world to face their demons alone. And then there's the personal, the part that lives in the house where the family gathers and eats and remembers. My last talk with Stephen was a fight. I tell myself we were kids. I tell myself he forgave me later when he called Mom. My heart knows how fragile those minutes are, and the rational mind knows that fights don't cause suicide, that there are complex, naughty reasons people walk to the edge. But on the nights when grief is acute, I replay the driveway scene and imagine saying the right thing. Call me. I'm here. Tell me what's wrong. If he had felt like he could call, would he have? That question is tormented love wearing the mask of responsibility. This isn't only about paperwork or one counselor or one form. It's a story about how institutions sometimes fail the people they're supposed to protect. It's about how the language of help can be reduced to clerical procedures and how fragile human beings can be lost between boxes on a chart. It's also a story of memory, little things that hold a life together. The chipmunk in his hand, the truck in the driveway, the sound of his laughter. Those details are what I riff against when the cold facts seem too much. They're what I go back to when I want the Stephen who liked ants and wildlife and late-night road trips to be real again. If you're watching this and you're dealing with the aftermath of something similar, talk to someone. Tell a friend, call a crisis line, talk to a doctor. If someone tells you they've thought about suicide, don't send them a pamphlet. Sit down. Make time. Stay with them. If you can, help them find immediate care. Sometimes the right presence at the right time is what stops the fall. I still drive past that driveway sometimes. I still picture him, shirt pulled up from hauling something heavy, laughing. And in the quiet hours, when the grief is raw, I remind myself of what we can do now. Ask how people are, listen to their answers, and make sure that when someone checks a box that matters, we treat it like the crisis it can be. The closest thing to justice we've had is truth. The FOIA pulled the form into the light. It didn't bring Stephen back. It didn't fix the small ways we failed each other. But it did reveal the places where human systems didn't hold up. Sometimes, naming that failure is the first movement toward making sure it doesn't happen again. People talk about guilt and blame as if they're tidy packages we can put away. They aren't. Grief is messy. Blame is a way we try to make sense of senselessness. What matters now is learning, listening, and demanding better for people like Stephen. If this story moved you, please share it. Talk about it with the people you love. If you're in the U.S. and need immediate help, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're elsewhere, your local health services can help. Like and subscribe for more stories that dig into justice, grief, and what we owe one another. And tell me in the comments, what do you think needs to change for veterans and for people coming home? Suggested YouTube description, short. A brother's story about grief, bureaucracy, and the moments before a life was lost. Stephen checked a box that said he'd thought about suicide, and the response he got still haunts his family. This is a petition to listen better, to treat every such call for help as urgent. Trigger warning applies.